Hanover County Sheriff's Office investigated a complaint of alleged bank fraud against an employee of Montgomery Capital Corporation. The suspect, Neal Kriete, was sentenced to 10 months incarceration and 5 years of probation for bank fraud after the incident became known to the federal judges. However, there were a lot of issues as how the investigation was conducted. And I'm here with Mr. Neal Kriete to talk to him about his complaint against the Hanover County Sheriff's Office. Now, you told me the investigator Scott Woody had issues that basically was not satisfactory to the investigation. What happened?
Well, Hanover Sheriff's Department sent Mr. Woody to my house to start an investigation and to gather the evidence and the information of the crimes committed. And I had Mr. Morgan Gassman with me at the time for a witness. Mr. Woody came to my home in 2008, and we can get the exact date of that visit. Mr. Woody was at my home for an hour and a half. I told him and showed him evidence and told him about...
What was the evidence that you showed him?
The evidence I showed him was about credit card fraud with Chase Manhattan Bank. It was about bank fraud and forgery or altering a signature card with SunTrust Bank. And it was about bad checks written to SunTrust Mortgage. It was about bank fraud with the Bank of Louisa on an equity line of credit, and bad checks written to that bank as well as bad checks written to the Division of Motor Vehicles, multiple convenience stores, gas stations. There was also a part of the Bank of Louisa fraud. There was a refund check of $3,500 that was we were given a duplicate copy. My lawyer and myself were given a duplicate copy of that $3,500 check, which I deposited, and it was agreed that we would split that check down the middle. And I deposited that in my bank account, and before it cleared, I wrote her a check for half of that amount, or $1,750.
So were you a victim of all the financial fraud that was involved?
Yes.
And how much money total were you defrauded?
Well, the fraud totals probably in the neighborhood of $45,000 to $50,000.
Okay. And who do you think is the primary suspect in this fraud?
The primary suspect is my estranged wife, Faye Woodson Reidelbach Kriete.
Okay. And were you guys together, married at the time?
Yes.
Okay. And what elements can you claim that would connect her to being a fraud, even though she was your wife?
Well, obviously I didn't get to know her well enough before I fell into a con. The marriage was a con. The marriage was a fraud or a con, or set up the crimes that she has committed.
Okay. And what would be your support for this
well,
fraud?
I have documentation, I have pictures, and I have information of her involvement in a prostitution ring in the Richmond, Henrico, Hanover area.
Okay. Is it a place of business, or is it something?
Yes, it's a place of
business.
business.
What is it called?
It's Ava's Boutique on West Broad. I've had trouble getting information about that because I don't have access to the
West Broad or Broadway?
West Broad Street in Henrico County. It may be considered Richmond, but actually it is in Henrico County.
Okay.
As far as I know.
Trying to elaborate a little bit more about what the kind of evidence is that you found that indicated this is a prostitution ring.
Well, I had heard from other people that were aware of her involvement in prostitution. I went to the Henrico County courts and to research their court documents and found that Ava's Boutique had a lawsuit or a judgment against her, sued her for $18,000, where she actually tried to defraud Ava. And I have those documents from that court.
So there are other victims involved that are
Yeah, well, there's another victim directly involved that was directly involved with the marriage, and that would be her aunt, 95-year-old Aunt Bessie Askew. Bessie is deceased now, but she died broke and with a broken heart. But she defrauded Miss Askew, or her aunt, out of $250,000. That was also supposedly investigated in Hanover County.
Okay. Any witnesses?
Yes, there are witnesses.
Who are your witnesses?
To the other crime?
Either that or relating directly to you.
Oh, okay. My witnesses would be Mr. Morgan Gassman.
Okay.
I think Mr. Kamau has already spoke with him. Mr. David Tatum, who was a lifelong friend of mine and a former deputy sheriff.
Okay. And these are witnesses to what part of the...
They're witnesses to, Mr. Gassman witnessed the interview with Mr. Scott Woody, investigator Scott Woody of the Hanover Sheriff's Department.
Okay. And then
He was there for the entire thing.
Did you witness any parts of the criminal activity?
Okay, Mr. Tatum
Uh-huh.
was with me when I went to the Commonwealth Attorney in Hanover about bank fraud, and he told us that bank fraud was a civil matter, and I agreed it was civil because we were married, but it's also criminal, and he refused to see it as a criminal matter.
Okay. All right, and then you said you had dealings with the other investigators at the Hanover Sheriff's Department?
Yes. Mr. Investigator Rashford called me and told me he had talked to Chase Manhattan Bank, or the credit card bank, about the fraud, and he told me that it was a civil matter.
Okay.
That bank fraud was a civil matter.
And what about the other two investigators?
The other investigators, David Kliz, was informed of her attempt to have me murdered.
Okay, so there was a plot to have you murdered?
Yes.
And what did he tell you about that? What was his
He
claim?
really didn't tell me anything other than to watch myself. He offered me no help whatsoever, no protection. He confronted her and her attorney at the courtroom and warned her about that. And then later, after I spoke with the state police about that matter, the state police told me that they were informed by Hanover that they had referred me to the Louisa County Sheriff's Department a year prior. When I got that information, I went to and filed a complaint with the Louisa County Sheriff's Department. I had two witnesses that were approached about hiring murder for hire. Both witnesses gave sworn statements to the Louisa County Sheriff's Department, and that would be Investigator Richard Baker.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Baker took the statements. Mr. Baker spoke with me. Mr. Baker had her in for questioning, and he informed me that he was going to take the case to the Louisa County prosecutor for prosecution, but told me he could not make me any promises that the case would be accepted, and the Louisa County prosecutor considered it hearsay evidence and did not think he could win the case, so he refused.
So they at least considered it, but then...
Yes, it was. There are
strong.
sworn statements taken. There was interviews by Mr. Baker, and I was told that Mr. Baker had retired, but I'm now finding out that he is not retired. But I have spoke with Investigator Stanton with that Sheriff's Department in Louisa, and he told me he was my contact information from here out, and he told me he would help me any way he could.
Okay. And did you have contact with the Virginia State Police? Investigator Worley?
Yes, I went to the Virginia State Police Department headquarters right here in Henrico. Not sure which division it is, but anyway, I spoke with Investigator Worley, and I went through all of the information and the whole story of what's happened, and he took notes, and that meeting lasted probably an hour. And when it was over, he told me he was going to go talk to his supervisor, and he came back in the room and told me that they did not want to get involved. The state police did not.
Okay. And then how'd you end up getting involved with the U.S. Postal Inspector?
Well, after I'd been denied by Hanover and been denied by the state police, I took the case to the evidence to the United States Postal Investigation Service, being that one of the crimes was postal fraud.
Okay.
And I think he was compelled to investigate, and I have the utmost respect and gratitude for Postal Investigator O'Donnell. He is the only man in law enforcement that I have met to date that knew his job and was willing to do his job.
Okay. And you say you took this complaint to County Judge Alderman?
Well, some of the case was unfolded in the courtroom in a show cause hearing for the divorce and on the civil side of the case, where I was trying to get a divorce. I hired an attorney, Mr. Edward Barnes, with Barnes & Deal law firm in Chesterfield County, and Mr. Barnes took me for $15,000, and he played nothing but games with her attorney, and the court. He scheduled a show cause hearing in the Hanover Circuit Court, and on August the 30th of 2007, and at that hearing, the Honorable Judge Alderman asked the question point blank to the criminal about mortgage payments that she had failed to make under a pendente lite or separation agreement that Mr. Barnes had drafted, and it was signed and entered into the court. Judge Alderman asked about the mortgage payments that had not been made, and her response was that she had made those payments on August the 29th, which would have been for the month of July and August of 2007. That check came back. It was written on a froze or blocked account. So she used that check as evidence in the courtroom of mortgage payments and an answer to the judge's question about mortgage payments.
Okay, so in result, there was no relief that you gained from
none whatsoever.
Judge. Now, it did go before. Now, the U.S. Postal Inspector took the case to Federal Judge Roberts Payne, and that was actually a federal criminal case against Fay. What happened in that?
Well, there was a plea bargain done, and I was excluded from the plea bargain process. I'd hired a second attorney because I had fired Mr. Barnes. I hired another attorney in Powhatan County, Mr. Graham Jennings. Mm-hmm. Mr. Jennings, basically I initiated this federal investigation on my own. Mr. Jennings had nothing to do with it until the crimes became obvious and the charges were filed, and then postal investigators started speaking with and getting Mr. Jennings involved.
So ultimately she ended up being sentenced 10 months incarceration and 5 years probation for bank fraud. Was there any order of restitution made?
None whatsoever.
Okay. And you're seeking relief in one area particularly. I'm sure you're seeking relief and restitution, and then you want the Hanover County Sheriff's Office to mortify their investigation that you brought to them.
Well, the Hanover investigator, Scott Woody, that came to my house and spent an hour and a half reviewing the facts and documents. Yeah,
but I'm just saying you're asking that they mortify their lack of professional investigation, and you're seeking restitution for the money that you lost. Okay, well, I think we have enough right here. I appreciate talking with you, and this will be an ongoing investigation. Thank you very much.